splintering wood flew across the room as the front door gave way. Mohammed Ibrahim Munir siphoned 40 million. But how did this soft-spoken tax accountant? To his clients in South Manchester, he was a brilliant mind who projected behind his mahogany desk. He used his mastery of the tax code to, in the rainy commercial heart of Manchester, at 907 to 909 Kingsway, stood the respectable offices of Munir Co. To the passing commuter, it was just another brick-and-mortar professional firm, a place for local business owners to file their returns and seek advice on their portfolios. Mohammed Ibrahim Munir was the face of this establishment. As a fellow of the Association of Chartered Certified Accountants, his FCCA credentials weren't just a decoration on the wall, they were a shield. He was a pillar of the British Pakistani community who had built a life of comfort and prestige through decades of perceived hard work. People trusted him with their life savings and their commercial secrets because he possessed the one thing money usually. He was a man who understood the intricate labyrinth of European tax law, moving through its complexities with the grace of a seasoned navigator. But while he spent his days discussing legitimate audits and small business growth, a darker reality was pulsing through the firm's ledger. Behind the polished brass plaque of Munir Co., a staggering criminal architecture was being constructed, one that would eventually threaten the financial fabric of the United Kingdom. No one saw the cracks in the facade. No one suspected that the man in the crisp, tailored suit was orchestrating a heist that would make traditional bank robbers look like amateurs. He was the perfect ghost, hiding the largest theft in the city's history behind the mundane paperwork of a neighborhood tax office. Behind the unassuming facade of Munir Co., located at 907 to 909 Kingsway in Manchester, a sophisticated shadow economy was beginning to breathe. Between 2001 and 2003, Mohammed Ibrahim Munir leveraged his stature as a chartered certified accountant to construct a labyrinthine financial trap known as missing trader or carousel fraud. At its heart, the scheme exploited a specific loophole in the European Union's tax laws regarding the movement of goods between member states. Using front companies like Gold-Link Direct Limited and the firm International Limited, Munir orchestrated the importation of thousands of high-value Nokia mobile phones and CPU chips from across Europe. These shipments arrived in the United Kingdom VAT-free, legally bypassing tax at the border. However, the moment these goods hit British soil, the deception accelerated. Munir's shell companies would sell the merchandise to buffer firms within the UK, adding a 17.5% value-added tax to the invoice. While the purchasers paid this tax in good faith, the missing trader, controlled by Munir, would collect the cash and then simply disappear from the tax. To complete the carousel, the goods were often exported back to Europe, allowing the final company in the chain to claim a VAT refund from the British Revenue Service, effectively stealing from the public purse twice on the same pallet of electronics. It was a ghost trade, where millions of dollars in currency flowed through Manchester bank accounts, while the physical goods often sat stationary in cold warehouses. The operation thrived within the tight-knit business corridors of Manchester's British Pakistani community, where Munir's professional credentials provided. But there was one detail that didn't make sense, and no one noticed it yet. The sheer volume of mobile phones purportedly being traded by these small Manchester offices was beginning to exceed the total number of handsets actually manufactured for the entire British market, creating a structural impossibility. The quiet, paper-strewn offices at 907 to 909 Kingsway and to the neighbors and the clients of Munir and Company, this was the heart of a respectable professional practice. But by early 2003, invisible alarm bells were ringing inside the headquarters of HM Revenue and Customs. Investigators there had begun to notice a statistical impossibility. The volume of mobile phones being traded through small, nondescript Manchester-based companies was surging at a rate. It was as if every man, woman, and child in the northwest of England was buying and selling 10 phones a week. This anomaly triggered the birth of Operation Millipede, a high-stakes investigative effort aimed at unraveling a sophisticated web spanning from the United Kingdom to the Punjab province in Pakistan. HMRC agents began a painstaking process of surveillance. They weren't just watching the front door of the Kingsway office, they were tracing the digital and financial fingerprints of every transaction. They identified a chain of command that shouldn't have existed for a simple accounting firm. Names like Raheel Sheikh, Abid Gias, and Eamon J. Maloney began to appear with worrying frequency in the paperwork of shell companies like GoldLink Direct Limited. These weren't just clients. They were vital cogs in a machine designed to generate millions in illegal VAT refunds. The investigator spent months meticulously mapping the buffer companies used to distance the mastermind from the initial theft. Each time a shipment of Nokia handsets crossed a border, a new layer of deception was added to the pile. But what investigators discovered buried within the accounting codes changed everything. They realized that Mohammed Ibrahim Munir wasn't just a consultant to these criminals, he was the architect of their entire reality. He was using his FCCA credentials to provide an air of absolute legitimacy to banks and regulators who would. This wasn't a case of an accountant turning a blind eye to a client's shady dealings. This was a professional using his deep technical knowledge of the tax system to weaponize it against the public revenue. The agents involved in Operation Millipede watched as the numbers grew from thousands to tens of millions. They were looking for the perfect moment to strike, hoping to catch the entire gang with the evidence in their hands. They believed they were one step ahead of the soft-spoken accountant on Kingsway, never suspecting that the man they were watching was already planning his next move. The air inside the HMRC command center was thick with anticipation in August of 2005. After 4 years of tracing the dizzying loops of the mobile phone carousel, the investigators of Operation Millipede finally felt the weight of the handcuffs in their pockets. They had spent thousands of hours trailing the paper ghosts created by Mohammed Ibrahim Munir. Every ledger, every fraudulent VAT return, and every shell company like GoldLink Direct Limited led back to that respectable storefront on Kingsway. They were ready to move. They believed they had the mastermind cornered in his own domain. But while the officers were finalizing their tactical plans in a darkened briefing room, the man they were hunting was already moving. He wasn't hiding in a basement or burning incriminating documents in a back alley. Instead, Mohammed Ibrahim Munir did what any successful professional would do before a long trip. He packed a suitcase, locked his home in the quiet suburbs of Manchester, and drove toward the lights of the city's international airport. At the terminal, there were no flashing blue lights or dramatic standoffs. Munir moved through the halls with the practiced ease of a man who belonged in the upper echelons of society. He wore the quiet confidence of a chartered certified accountant, a man whose professional credentials had protected him from suspicion for nearly half a decade. To the airline staff and security guards, he was simply another high-flying businessman heading to the east. He boarded a flight destined for the Punjab province of Pakistan, leaving behind the gray skies of England and a $40 million hole in the public purse. When HMRC agents finally breached the doors of Munir and Co accountants at 907 to 909 Kingsway, the silence inside was deafening. The phones were no longer ringing. The desks were unnervingly tidy. The man who had orchestrated a carousel of fraud that spanned across the European Union had vanished into the morning mist. They had the evidence, and they would soon have his accomplices like Raheel Sheikh and Abid Gias in custody. It was a bitter realization for the investigators. They hadn't just lost their primary suspect, they had lost the architect who knew exactly where the money was buried. But the investigation was about to learn that catching a man is one thing, but bringing him back from a place where the rules are different is quite another. The courtroom in Liverpool stood silent as the final verdict was read in the late autumn of 2011. It was November 25th, exactly 6 years after Mohammed Ibrahim Munir had disappeared. Justice had finally arrived in a room where the primary defendant was nowhere to be found. Being tried in absentia is a rare and somber affair in the British legal system. It removes the standard theatricality of a defendant's reactions, leaving only the cold, hard numbers of the fraud to speak for themselves. The jury had spent weeks untangling the web of gold-linked direct and the massive carousel fraud that had drained £42.5 million from the public purse. The evidence provided by HM Revenue and Customs investigators under Operation Millipede was insurmountable. The judge did not mince words when the final decision was rendered. For his role as the master architect and the professional mind who lent legitimacy to a criminal enterprise, Mohammed Ibrahim Munir was sentenced to 12 years in prison. His brother, Mohammed Munir, received 4 years and 6 months for his logistical support in the laundering and company setups. Other key players, including Rahil Sheikh, Abid Giyas, and Ayman Maloney, had also faced their own but the 12-year sentence for the mastermind remained a symbolic victory, a mark on a paper for a man who was now thousands of miles away, likely watching the news from a distance. Even with the sentences handed down, the work of the government was far from over. In 2012, a judge signed a confiscation order for £12 million of the gang's assets. Investigators turned their attention to the real estate portfolios in the high-end suburbs of Manchester and the sprawling estates in Pakistan's Punjab province. Under the Proceeds of Crime Act, HMRC began the slow, arduous process of seizing everything linked to the Munir family's ill-gotten gains. Yet, the man himself remains a phantom. Today, Mohammed Ibrahim Munir remains one of the United Kingdom's most prominent tax fugitives. He is believed to be living in the city of Lahore, shielded by the lack of a streamlined extradition treaty between the UK and Pakistan for white-collar financial crimes. He had used his education and his reputation as a chartered certified accountant to steal from the very system he was sworn to uphold. While the tax laws were eventually changed to prevent similar carousel frauds from ever happening again, the millions he siphoned away remain a ghost in the ledger. We are left to wonder if a man can truly find peace while living a life purchased with stolen millions, knowing he can never return to the city where he built his reputation. Does the luxury of a Punjab estate outweigh the cost of a... If this story of professional betrayal and a high-stakes disappearance gave you chills, hit subscribe and the notification. Drop your theory about where the accountant is today in the comments below.